The face of that Just Facts study showing how many illegal aliens are registered to vote, does that make passing the SAVE Act even more critical?
Absolutely. I'm 1,000% behind the SAVE Act. I really appreciate Senator Roy and Senator Lee, Representative Roy and Senator Lee. This is something that absolutely needs to be done, and common sense. My goodness, only U.S. citizens are supposed to be voting. It is absolutely common sense, and it's also the law. No other country would entertain this, and the Democrats have tried repeatedly to allow non-citizens to vote. Even right here in our nation's capital, they want non-citizens to vote.
No, you're exactly right, and that's why they'll talk out of both sides of their mouth on this, because we know they want non-citizens voting, even if that means illegal aliens voting as well. But then on the other hand, they'll say, hey, federal law prohibits it, so Republicans, what are you so worried about? But right now, as it stands, even though the law says that especially illegal aliens are not allowed to be voting in federal elections, U.S. elections, it's all just on the basically pinky promise system. It's the honor system of, you know, if you're someone and you're registering to vote and you just tick the box, I'm a U.S. citizen, well, there's no requirement to double check that. So if you have someone who already came here illegally, they have already lied and cheated the system, I mean, what's really going to stop them from ticking a little box on a piece of paper, knowing no one's going to verify it? So knowing that and knowing your Democrat colleagues' view on this, how hard or difficult do you think it may be for the House Speaker to, you know, push this bill for a full floor vote to pass it up to the Senate?
Well, you know, we can pass it all we want to over in the House of Representatives, but it's certainly going nowhere in the Senate. And certainly Joe Biden, who wants everybody to vote, unless you're a MAGA Republican, it's just not going to happen. And I'll tell you, the facts are out there. You mentioned some of them. In a recent study, Just Facts, 10 to 27% of non-citizen adults in the United States are illegally registered, just like you said, when the motor voter, are registering to vote when they get their driver's licenses, et cetera. And there could be millions, literally 2, 5, 10, who knows, illegals registered to vote. These are potentially high enough to simply just throw an election, the will of the American people by the wayside. And this could very easily have happened last time, and it could very easily happen this time. That's why we absolutely have got to pass the SAVE Act. And let me tell you, the people out there watching this show, call your representative, and especially if he's a Democrat, tell him he better be checking to see if people are citizens before they are allowed to vote. It is outrageous that we even have to be talking about something like this.
It really is. And does it make your job even harder when, you know, it's one thing for obviously both sides of the political spectrum to have opposing views. Obviously, that's the point. And so there's squabbling, debate, going back and forth between the two. But does it make your job more difficult when the left, they're not being honest about their intentions? Because again, they'll just keep pointing when it comes to the SAVE Act and why they don't want to support it. They'll just keep saying, but federal law says. But that's like saying federal law says it's illegal to cross the border without proper verification, right? And so I guess that means no one's ever crossed illegally because, hey, the law says you can't. So that means no one can. But obviously they do. Over 10 million have, especially since Biden took office. So does it make your job even harder that it's one thing for you to debate someone who has an opposing point of view, but when they're not being honest about what their intentions are, I mean, it's how do we move past that roadblock?
I'll tell you how. In November, the American people need to save their country, and they need to turn out and put these woke Democrats out of office. And let's hope that some of these folks that are in blue cities, counties, and states wake up to the crime, to the terrorism potential, to the enormous burden, that tax burden and economy that we have with inflation roaring and out of control and getting worse every single day. I think the Democrat liberal woke have absolutely lost their minds. And, if we can send a message this November, it'll be a loud and clear message, but that's what it's going to have to take. We've got to do it at the ballot box, and then we also have to remember that the ballot box there has to be an election of integrity that we have confidence in, so that we won't feel like we have wasted our vote, or that there's a corrupt regime as if we were in the Soviet Union or Venezuela or Cuba or Red China, that where our votes mean nothing. I think it was Joe Stalin who said it's not the folks that cast the votes that make the decisions. It's those that count the votes that make the decisions. And this could never be more true than right now.
No, you're spot on with that, and it's, there's so much that goes into this, and there's so much really at stake. You and I have talked about before about Border Patrol morale being down because, it's hard to go do your job every day when you're not allowed to go do your job. And then even if you do take someone into custody, you see them get, released in 2 seconds and put on planes and then flown to wherever they want to go live it up in luxury hotels on the taxpayer dime. I mean, it's morale killing. And the New York Post, they were talking actually to some national, there you have the headline right there, but to Texas National Guards troops. And they were talking about how demoralized they feel that back in March, we all watched as over 200 migrants tore down border fencing and protection. They rushed some of the uniformed agents at the border. Some of those agents actually were injured in that melee. And now there's a judge in Texas who's dropping all charges, riot charges, any other charges that came of this specific incident are now all being dropped. And so, agents are speaking to the New York Post, and they're obviously they have to keep themselves anonymous, but they're saying, I mean, this is just another stab in the back. It's just another morale killer. But is this just par for the course under Biden?
Yes, it is. It's just another example of Democrats that don't hold people accountable for their bad actions. We should hold the Democrats accountable. And the very fact that mass of illegal aliens was allowed to storm our border with no consequence is absolutely unacceptable and intolerable. Democrats don't hold people accountable. They don't hold criminals accountable. We've seen that with the defund the police, with liberal prosecutors, Democrat prosecutors, and their policies have enabled this kind of insanity that has made the border crisis worse, incentivized illegal immigration, and quite frankly caused the crime wave that we are seeing. And the Border Patrol, with their low morale, they deserve much better than this. Illegals coming in from 140 different nations, 27,000 Chinese nationals in the last few months, almost 10 million illegals crossing since Biden took office. And quite frankly, another thing, 17,000 pounds of fentanyl last year alone, enough to kill 3.8 billion people. And in fact, 115,000 plus Americans have died of drug overdoses just last year. That's why morale is nearly non-existent among the Border Patrol. They deserve a lot better than this. Our military deserves a lot better than this. And the American people deserve a lot better than this. Our national security is really on the rocks. And I think with all the people coming in unvetted, another 9/11 style attack it's not a matter of if, but I think when. And Biden, I want to say this, he could close this border and secure that border with one phone call and do it in 24 hours. But he does everything he can to destroy and erase the border. And I think we need to have Americans remember, as I said earlier, they need to go to the polls. And there's never been a bigger contrast between Democrats and Republicans in my entire life than what we are seeing today. And I'll tell you, common sense to save our country, to save our nation and our freedoms and liberties, our Constitution, our way of life, our freedoms of religion, we have to go to the polls and toss these rascals out, because that's what's happening here today. The world's on fire, and the match has been lit by Joe Biden. And that's the common denominator between America's unraveling and deterioration around the world. It is Joe Biden. It's self-inflicted wounds. His policies are a disaster. He's the rising inflations, the open border, skyrocketing crime, woke military, soft on China. My gosh, he just expressed his condolences for the death of President Raisi, the butcher of Tehran, in the plane crash in Iran. This guy is responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, including Americans. We don't need to be sending condolences. We need to be saying, thank you, Lord. We're glad to be rid of one beast like that. That's all I can say about that.
Congressman, I appreciate your passion. Keep up the great work on Capitol Hill. I know it's a tough fight. Thanks for joining us tonight.